DC doesn't lack great characters. It sometimes lacks the writing to match them. One inconsistent arc, one misused storyline, and even fan-favorite heroes start to feel wasted. Characters with deep lore and huge potential reduced to repetitive roles, weak conflicts, or directionless plots that go nowhere. They didn't lose relevance. The storytelling failed to evolve with them. Fans can see what these characters should be, but the gap keeps growing with every new run. But how long can strong characters survive weak execution? Here are 10 DC characters who need better writing right away. At number 10 is Connor Kent. Connor Kent, the tactile telekinetic clone of Superman and Lex Luthor, is a semi-popular hero currently suffering from massive editorial stagnation. The original blueprint for Connor set him up to evolve from a brash, leather jacket-wearing teenager into a complex powerhouse who reconciled his dual genetic legacy. The harsh reality is that he is completely stuck in a perpetual 90s nostalgia loop, completely lacking forward momentum. The writing frequently regresses his maturity, stripping him of past character development to portray him as a confused, angsty teen who feels out of place. Writers fail to give him a unique mission, rendering him redundant alongside Clark and John Kent. This ongoing mishandling occurs because DC's shifting continuity erased and restored his history so many times that current writers don't know which version of his past actually matters. The only way to salvage Connor is to let him permanently graduate from the Superboy moniker, giving him a distinct adult mantle and a solo series focused on sci-fi corporate espionage, investigating LexCorp's hidden cloning facilities. At number 9 is Tim Drake. Tim Drake, a core Batman legacy hero still active in DC today, is trapped in the past. Originally, Tim had massive potential, celebrated during his legendary run in the 90s and 2000s as the smart Robin, who deduced Batman's identity and was destined to become the world's greatest detective. But modern runs have aggressively trapped him in a holding pattern, forcing him through constant identity crises, like the disastrous Drake moniker and his frustrating inability to graduate past the Robin mantle, even with his late 2025 return to the red and black suit. The writing consistently undermines his growth. Instead of advancing his independence, scripts portray him as highly insecure, reliant on Bruce's validation, and stripped of his formidable detective skills. This mishandling stems from editorial congestion, as Damian Wayne is the definitive modern Robin and Nightwing thrives, leaving DC completely unsure of Tim's true place. If DC actually wants to respect his legacy, they need to give Tim a permanent, mature mantle, move him out of Gotham, and place him in a detective noir series. At number 8 is Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter, a founding Justice League member and powerful telepath, is a beloved mid-tier hero consistently ruined by jobber syndrome. Fans originally expected John Johns to be the stoic, empathetic soul of the DC universe, utilizing his vast array of powers to handle threats too complex for Superman. Instead, fans universally complain that he is constantly used as a punching bag just to show how strong a new villain is. Modern scripts constantly overlook his brilliant detective skills and profound wisdom, reducing him to a fragile alien who instantly catches fire or gets mind-controlled in every major crisis. This happens because writers struggle to balance a character who possesses Superman-level strength alongside unmatched telepathy, lazily neutralizing him early in events to manufacture tension for the rest of the team. DC finally realized this massive mistake in March 2025 by launching Absolute Martian Manhunter, giving John the exact rich, atmospheric solo spotlight fans had been begging for, proving he never belonged in the background to begin with. If you think DC dropping the ball on the Justice League is bad, just wait until you see how they've butchered their mystical heavy hitters and stripped the teeth off their most lethal anti-heroes. The next 4 characters are trapped in endless cycles of forced trauma, nerfed magic, and severe character assassination. At number 7 is Zatanna. Zatanna, the premier stage magician and real-world spellcaster of the DC universe, is a semi-popular heroine desperately needing better solo direction. At her core, Zatanna is built to be a heavy-hitting mystical leader, balancing her glamorous theatrical career with terrifying battles against eldritch horrors. However, readers consistently complain that she has been reduced to a literal plot device. The writing constantly strips away her personal agency, utilizing her backward magic solely as a convenient deus ex machina to fix convoluted Justice League plots, or relegating her to being John Constantine's frustrated love interest. Writers completely ignore her personal struggles, avoiding deep character arcs in favor of using her as a flashy guest star. This persistent issue occurs because DC lacks a cohesive, long-term plan for its magical corner, leaving characters like her floating without a dedicated solo title. To break this cycle, she desperately needs a permanent, ongoing series that dives deeply into her stage performer life, while facing magical threats that specifically target her unique family legacy. At number 6 is Roy Harper. Roy Harper, the incredibly skilled archer operating as Arsenal, is a classic legacy hero perpetually trapped in a cycle of trauma porn. Roy's trajectory was supposed to stand as a testament to overcoming addiction, evolving into a competent, fiercely independent hero and devoted father. But the reality is that DC refuses to let him be happy. The writing continually subjects him to miserable storylines, forcing him to relapse, lose an arm, or even literally die in Heroes in Crisis. And even after bringing him back from the dead, DC still treats his trauma as his only defining personality trait. The current creative teams completely sideline his brilliant tactical mind and weapon mastery, portraying him as a volatile, broken man who is always one bad day away from ruin. This happens because the editorial views his historic 1970s drug addiction storyline as his only defining trait, constantly manufacturing tragedy to recreate that edgy tone. To fix him, DC must let Roy definitively heal, focusing his stories on his elite marksmanship and leadership abilities within a globe-trotting espionage agency completely separate from Green Arrow. At number 5 is Jason Todd. Jason Todd, the dark sheep of the Batman family operating as the Red Hood, is a vigilante trapped on a frustrating moral pendulum. His iconic return in Under the Red Hood established him as a premier antagonist turned anti-hero, creating expectations for a lethal protector who challenges Batman and his strict moral code. However, fans consistently point out the exhausting back-and-forth effect of his morality. He uses guns, then rubber bullets, then crowbars, then lethal force again, depending on the week. This character assassination occurs during family crossovers, where writers strip his lethal edge to force a compliant son role, making him completely redundant alongside Nightwing and Tim Drake. This constantly happens because DC wants Red Hood for his edgy marketability, but broader comic synergy requires him to be friendly enough for mainstream merchandise alongside Batman. The crazy part is, DC actually tried to fix this in September 2025 by giving him a mature-rated solo series outside Gotham with lethal force fully approved, but the book was controversially canceled on issue number 1. Now, DC's best anti-hero is stuck in editorial limbo all over again. At number 4 is Starfire. Starfire, the fiery Tamarinian warrior and core Titans member, is a highly recognizable hero suffering from massive narrative regression. Anyone familiar with her classic runs knows Coriander is supposed to be fiercely independent, balancing her joyful compassion with her terrifying, battle-hardened history as an enslaved cosmic princess. Instead, comic readers frequently complain that she is constantly infantilized or reduced to eye candy. The writing repeatedly ignores her decades of Earth experience, forcing her into an overly naive, fish-out-of-water persona who doesn't understand basic human customs. Furthermore, writers frequently strip her of her tactical leadership, using her primarily as a dramatic romantic prop for Dick Grayson rather than a standalone powerhouse. This happens because writers heavily rely on the cultural memory of her bubbly 2003 animated counterpart, ignoring her much richer, mature comic book history. The obvious course correction here is to firmly establish her as a fierce, veteran cosmic leader, launching a solo space opera series where she liberates oppressed alien worlds and commands a fleet, completely detached from Earth-based romance. But as bad as that regression is, the final 3 characters on this list haven't just been mishandled by bad writers, they have been actively and intentionally sabotaged by DC editorial for decades. At number 3 is Stephanie Brown. Stephanie Brown, a beloved Gotham vigilante operating as Spoiler and occasionally Batgirl, is a semi-popular hero constantly fighting for editorial respect. Stephanie is built to be the relatable, blue-collar heart of the Bat family, an optimistic underdog who overcomes her villainous father's legacy through sheer grit rather than endless Wayne wealth. Despite this, editorial perpetually treats her like an incompetent amateur. The writing frequently highlights her making reckless mistakes, ignoring her vast training under Batman and Oracle to portray her as the family's weakest link. While her recent late 2025 inclusion in the New Titans lineup is a step in the right direction, writers still rarely give her solo villains, heavily leaning on her to be a quirky team player rather than a standalone powerhouse. This mistreatment happens because executive editorial historically disliked the character, leading to a lingering institutional habit of sidelining her in favor of Barbara Gordon. Redemption for Stephanie means sending her to college outside of Gotham, giving her a grounded, street-level solo series focused on her unyielding optimism and clever, improvised crime-fighting style. At number 2 is Beast Boy. Beast Boy, the incredibly versatile shapeshifter of the Titans, is a universally recognized mid-tier hero crippled by severe emotional stunt. Garfield's backstory sets him up to use his humor as a masking mechanism for his tragic past, eventually maturing into an elite powerhouse hero who masters the entire animal kingdom. Instead, editorial refuses to let him grow up, trapping him forever as the immature clown. The writing repeatedly regresses his emotional intelligence, forcing him to make stupid, impulsive decisions and act like a chaotic teenager regardless of his actual biological age. Writers completely ignore his terrifying combat potential, limiting his transformations to generic green gorillas or birds rather than microscopic or mythical beasts. This stagnation occurs because writers desperately cling to his iconic animated dynamic, fearing that allowing him to mature will alienate nostalgic readers. It is well past time that DC pushes Garfield into a serious environmental defense solo comic, forcing him to drop the jokes and utilize his powers in terrifying, tactical, and brutal ways. At number 1 is Captain Atom. Captain Atom, the quantum-powered military man who can manipulate vast amounts of energy, is a semi-popular powerhouse ruined by a singular, exhausting trope. On paper, Nathaniel Atom is designed to be DC's complex answer to nuclear deterrence, a fiercely loyal soldier constantly navigating the murky morality of taking direct orders from the United States government. Instead, readers universally complain that his only purpose in modern comics is to explode. The writing completely ignores his nuanced political struggles and vast reality warping abilities, treating his containment suit as a fragile balloon that inevitably ruptures to establish the threat level of a new villain. Writers refuse to explore his personal humanity, depicting him as a stiff, emotionless government stooge. This repeatedly happens because writers need an easy way to neutralize one of DC's strongest heroes without actually killing him permanently, utilizing his explosions as a lazy plot reset. To fix him, DC must make his containment suit indestructible, focusing entirely on political thriller narratives where his military loyalties clash with heroic ethics. These characters deserve better. Comment your top pick below, hit subscribe now, and turn on notifications for more deep comic breakdowns.